Good morning, APU, and happy Friday. Happy first day of October. I can hardly believe that we are already here, but we are. I'm so happy to be with you this morning. My name is Karen Rouggly, and I am the director in the Center for Student Action, as well as a campus pastor here. And I am excited to be with you and talking about service this morning. As many of you know, APU started out in 1899 as the Training School for Christian Workers. This college, this university was the first college on the West Coast aimed at educating men and women for Christian service. In fact, fun fact about APU, Mary Hill, our very first president, she actually left after serving in her role for just 1 year to go and serve as a full-time missionary in China. So the legacy of service at this institution is deep and rich. And for many students, the time that they participate in service during their college career is incredibly formative. It's a time that helps them learn more about God, learn more about themselves, about one another, cultures around the world, and things that are going on in their very own neighborhood. In fact, that story is my story. Many of you know, but I did my undergrad here at APU, and it was because of my participation in service when I was a student here that it actually shaped the entire trajectory of my work experience, my life experience, how I raised my family, and so much more. And so I am excited to be with you today and to talk with you and to have you hear from some students about their experience in service. So joining me is a panel of your very own peers, and I want you to hear from them. I want you to hear about what service has meant to them. So I would love for you each to maybe share your name, and when you think about service, Gabe, what does that mean to you? So we'll start with you and then we'll go down the line. Tell us your name, maybe your major, and when you think about service, what does that mean to you?
Yes. Hi, my name is Gabriel Contreras, and I am a communication studies major. And when I think of service, it's the act of helping people. So service is giving your whole self to other people to help them in their lives in whatever they need. And that's what service means to me.
That's great.
Hello, my name is Lolly. I am a psychology major, and to me, service just really means being able to show the love of God through just acts of love. I think a lot of times we think of service as this like long-term thing or like this consistent thing, but I think we get to show service in our everyday lives and just being able to show like the love of God to random strangers or just people that we know in our life. And yeah, I think that's really important.
That's good.
Hi, my name is Holly. I'm a nursing major, and to me, service is simply being the hands and feet of Jesus and not about making us known where we go, whether it's locally or globally, but making him known and loving people as he would. And it's simply just us going as obedient followers of Jesus and loving people.
That's so good. One of the cool things about service, and at least it's been my experience, is that I have seen so many ways in which service actually contributes to the greater good of society. You know, some small acts really add up to some big things. Lolly, would you mind sharing with us some of the ways that you have seen service or service experiences even contribute to the bigger picture of what you see around the world?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about service that contributes to the greater good is just like people's attitudes towards one another. And I think doing those small acts of service in people's everyday lives truly changes their attitude throughout the whole day. So I've seen people who may be having a bad day and then they get a small act of service done. Like the other day I saw an APU student offer help to carry some things and the person was like, oh, only at APU would that happen. And so I think it just changes like people's mentality throughout the whole day, and it's something that you think about in the back of your head, and just like being able to change your emotional like perspective throughout the whole day, I think is just a really awesome thing that service can do.
That's so good. I love that APU students are known for that. I want more of that. Gabe, what do you think? How have you seen service contribute to the greater good?
Yeah, I think it's the small moments in life that make the biggest impact. I have a friend who I would run with in the mornings, and she would just, as people were passing by, she would just say hi to them. And whether they smiled or not, I think that made an impact in somebody's life. Just acknowledging them, as well as just greeting them and saying a simple hello, as well as just other small acts. Like during protests, we see people would bring water bottles for other people. And so it's just those small moments in life that really make the big impacts.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, sometimes I think we have this idea that it has to be these big sweeping things where we get on a plane and go around the world, and that's absolutely important. But I think it's just as impactful when we're doing that with our neighbor, when we're greeting a random stranger, when we're helping someone carry something. What about you, Holly? Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, I really think that it's a beautiful thing when people come together with their different gifts and talents that God has given us. I've seen a lot of service in my life with being with people and learning from them that I can't do it on my own. And in the small details or in the big picture of things, it's about coming together, and we're able to reach people with our different gifts and talents that God has given us. And so I may not be able to minister to someone as someone else may be able to with their experience or their story. So just the fact that we even have like our own testimony, our own background and like culture, it just brings so much into service that we can actually really reach people, and in that being the hands and feet of Jesus, of being relational with them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes too we forget that we also benefit from that. You know, that so often I feel like we're taught, you know, as Christians that we have to go out and we have to do service and we have to be the givers of that. But sometimes it's really impactful and it's really powerful to be the recipient of that. I remember during COVID, I had texted with a friend who is a faculty member here, and she was like, "How's your day going?" And I just like let her have the litany of, you know, working at home with 2 little kids in school and all of this during the middle of it. And she just showed up with lunch. She showed up with a pile of sandwiches that she and her kids made, and she's like, "Let us serve you in this way." And I was so blown away. I was dumbfounded. I was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that somebody would actually do this for me." And so I think the understanding of how service impacts us too is important, and it changes how we go and how we participate in service. Can you share of maybe a time where you have been impacted from service? Holly, anything you can think of?
Yeah, the one like big thing that comes to my mind, I went to Honduras about 3 years ago and served in a hospital there as well as like the local church. And we went and visited these villages of people living in cardboard houses. And I think what blew me away is the fact that we're coming there and we're just talking with them, we're praying with them, and the fact that they had so much joy and so much hope because they were in fact Christians as well. So, but just the fact of they didn't have much, but the joy that they had in Jesus was everything. And that's like they ministered to my heart. Like it wasn't even, it's not about what we can do for them, but it's just about seeing them and talking to them and loving them as Jesus would. And the fact that it just blew me away that they were like just speaking to me and speaking life into me and loving me when it's like they had the joy of Jesus that was so consistent despite their circumstances. And I think that's just such a privilege that we get to come into that, whether it's locally or globally, and learn from people of it's not about us. Like yes, it's good to serve and it's like being the hands and feet of Jesus, yes, but also it's just to be with these people and to learn from them as well, because yeah, it's just an opportunity to see the world and like the way Jesus sees us and how he sees others from different backgrounds and cultures and just stories. So I think that really has impacted me a lot.
Yeah. Gabe, it kind of reminds me of what you were saying about your friend just greeting somebody, you know, as you were running. What do you think about that? Has there been a time where you've been impacted by service?
Yeah, let's see. I can think just like this past summer, serving at a summer camp, just me personally having like a lot of anxiety and a lot of, which would trigger my asthma. And the people I was working with at this summer camp, I was just blown away by the amount of kindness and care that they showed me. Just like they would meet me in those times when I might have an anxiety attack, and then I would need my inhaler. And so just the the ability that they gave and showed me was really inspiring, and that's how I've seen service impact my life.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Lolly, what about you?
Yeah, so you said something earlier about being impacted by service when you are serving, and I think that's so true for me personally. I think for me, like the way that I'm mostly impacted by service and is when I am the one serving, not when I'm being served to, which is like funny. But I can think back to an experience when we were doing Mexico outreach, and so just being impacted by the power of prayer and the power of intentional prayer. This woman that I met was like going through something, and so we prayed over her, and we left that day, and she was just constantly on my mind. We came back, and just whenever I would think of her, the power, just like thinking of that prayer intentionally and like praying over her, and just for God to answer her prayer. And I was fortunate enough to go back a second time, and as soon as I saw her, she confirmed to me like about the situation, and she was like, hey, like, you know, thank you for what you did, and like I thank God for everything. And so just like being able to glorify God through that intentional prayer was something that was so impactful to me mostly, I think, but also it obviously impacted her life. And so I think it's so cool to see service impact, you know, both parties that are being involved. So yeah,
absolutely. It's a reciprocal relationship, right? That it's kind of like, I don't lose because I'm serving you. I gain too. And it's this mutual sense of we're both gaining together. You know, we're both contributing to advancing, you know, God's kingdom and God's love and God's justice and all of these things together at the same time, which is so cool. I mean, obviously, the last 18 months have significantly impacted how we've participated in service, what service looks like. With COVID, the entire world shut down. You know, there was a season where it felt like, I don't know that we're ever going to get to another country. I don't know that I'm ever going to get maybe even outside of my own neighborhood. And so the funny thing that I saw about that, though, was that the need didn't stop, right? The need for people to be engaged with one another, to be serving one another, to be in actual community, not just community that's behind a computer screen, right? That didn't ever stop. But it had to change. The way that we participated in service, it really had to change. So I'm curious, as you guys have gone through the last 18 months, even to 2 years, in what ways have you seen service change how we do things? How have we impacted one another? How have we gone above and beyond in a season where community was hard to come by, where there was a time where we couldn't even sit like this, you know? What did that look like for you?
I think for me, it's the story that pops in my mind is of how the parable when Jesus says, I go after the one, and how oftentimes service can look like like in a group setting, we reach people with service, and it's a big group of people, but how service can look like intentionally having a conversation if someone's going through a difficult time, and it's about that, the one, whether you're talking to a group and you impact 5 people or you impact one, even if it's just one, that's just as amazing as 5, because Jesus chases after the one. And so that's just what's popping in mind about even service in these past couple of years. It hasn't been able to maybe have the capacity for going in group settings and going with like larger group of people, but it's about the intentionality of, hey, it's just the same if I'm having a conversation with you or I'm serving you by bringing you lunch, and whatever that looks like of serving God is not just going, although that's amazing and that's needed, but it's just about, hey, what can I do right here where I'm planted in my neighborhood or wherever I am, and being intentional about that and stewarding what God has given me in that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Lolly, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think service, kind of like how Holly said, became a lot more intentional, and I think it became a lot more individualized as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us in our lives started to see individuals in like our families or just around us in our neighborhood that like we're really in need of that service. And so I think a lot of us became creative in how we gave that service. Yeah. I think for me, it just kind of became about, you know, phoning my grandma a lot more often than I wouldn't, you know?
I'm sure she loved that.
Yeah, she did. And so even if it was like a quick, you know, couple of minutes of of conversation, just making sure she's good or she needed anything. I think service became a lot more individualized and intentional.
Yeah.
And there was definitely need for like big acts of service and like group service. But I think just being able to serve those individuals in your life that were in that specific need, I think was really awesome. So yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's even during a global pandemic, we saw when a voice cries out, we see people in large gatherings go to serve.
Yeah.
For instance, over the summer of 2020, we saw the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
People were out in the streets, they wore their masks. Still, they were able to serve and help one another when people are in need. And even to like my personal story, working at a summer camp, we wore masks, we sanitized. The need is always there, and that's something we're able to do as individuals and as large groups. Even during the pandemic, we're able to find a way to help serve others.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard even, I've noticed this for myself as we have hopefully come on the other side of this pandemic, to just jump right back into things though. It still feels a little apprehensive at times. I still feel a little nervous. What do you think are some of the things that are in students' minds as they're approaching service, as the world is kind of returning to normal, and some of those large group gatherings that you talked about, Holly, are even more accessible than they used to be? What do you think is preventing college students from service? Gabe, what do you think?
I think one of the things could be financially. It's been a rough year for a lot of people and their families, and so people have lost their jobs. They might not be as well off as they were in the past, and so that can be a hindrance to finding a place to serve, and they just might not be able to do that financially.
Yeah, Holly, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of like the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all experienced with like the pandemic of just like not knowing. And so I think coming out of that, I really believe a lot of people want to serve and have that desire to, but it could be just like the hindrance of not knowing what it's going to look like, or just all those like unknown factors. But again, that's like something of, we get to trust the Lord in that, and if it doesn't look like the way we expect it to, like that's okay, because ultimately like He's in control, and just trusting in that through that process. But
Yeah. Lolly, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think as college students, we have very busy schedules. And I think sometimes like just a logistical thing is just like finding time for service. And so I think just being intentional with your service throughout the day and realizing that it doesn't have to be like a scheduled weekly thing. Or maybe that is something that does work for you. So I think just finding how service can work for you and fit into your scheduling, your life is really important.
It's funny, I've been thinking about that even in the last 2 weeks as we've been back on campus, and things just get busier and busier. And I have thought to myself multiple times, like, culture, I thought we agreed that we were all going to slow down. How did we go from 0 to 60? And now we can't even build in these moments, you know? But I think that's where it's tough, because we all know the benefit of service. You know, I think logically we know it, but I think we've all been impacted by it. Why do you think, even with all of these things that are very real realities, why is it still important to serve in this time? Why now? Why college? Why these experiences? Lolly, what do you think?
I think as college students, we're in such like a formative like part in our lives. And I think a lot of us are kind of trying to fit in like where our careers are going and like, you know, where God is leading us in our path and stuff like that. But I think through service, God can answer a lot of our prayers. And I think God can show us a lot of times how vocation and ministry can be bridged together. And I think for us, like that does answer a lot of our questions. And so I think like just exploring those options is like a big way that God can answer your prayers.
Yeah, absolutely. Holly, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the need is great, and it's honestly, I think it's greater than it's ever been, because people, especially with being isolated and with just a lot of broken things that have happened with losing jobs and just there's tension. I mean, just everything, the need is really great, and so there's an even greater need for service as well.
That's right.
And that's locally, globally, in whatever capacity that looks like to you.
Yeah.
And it can look like in so many things. Of what I love is service isn't just catered to one thing, but it can be catered to the gifts and talents. If you love to be creative, you can serve in that area.
Yeah.
And so that's what I just love, that we serve a God that he's creative in what he's given us.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
Amen. Gabe, what do you think?
I think of Proverbs. I believe it's in chapter 3. It says that, like, don't tell your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give you what I have when you have it with you that day. So for me, it's today's the day. That's right. And go and serve your neighbor. And that can be the person next to you, or that can be the person across the world. Today is the day to go and serve. So, yes.
Man, that's a whole word right there, Gabe. That's a good word. As we kind of even wrap up, I think about the legacy of APU, right? The legacy of this institution and so many people who have come before us, and women like Mary Hill, you know, who have really taken to heart this idea of service. Men and women who I see as my colleagues, who are faculty on this campus, who approach their whole life with an attitude of service, right? I'd love to hear from you in your personal life. Is there someone that you think of when you think of service that just embodies it? You know, maybe it's not somebody here, that's okay. But maybe in your personal life, is it like a person in your church or a grandparent or someone that just when you think of service, you're like, that's what I want. Who is it and what is it about them? Holly, what do you think?
Yeah, just what comes to the front of my mind is I think the Lord has really blessed me with a group of friends. And I see how they have not only served me in areas of my life, but how they go and serve others, and they make that an intentional part of their lives. Right. And also just like the diversity in their skill sets and their gifts that God has given them, and how they've been able to serve. I have one friend who like recently got back from a trip, and just the stories that she would tell me. She was in South Africa for a period of time, and just the privilege that I have, and even being able to have friends that make that a part of their lives, is just inspiring too, because I've just been learning a lot about how the people that we surround ourselves with is like ultimately the person that we are. And so just the importance of having community, and how that sharpens us to be able to sharpen each other in service, and learning, and just ultimately loving the Lord more, and out of that loving people more.
Lolly, what do you think?
Yeah, I think someone in my life that really embodies service is my dad, actually.
I love that.
So, Mr. Javier. Yeah, I think just the way that he approaches service in such a selfless way is really like impactful to me. It's not something that he does like in a structured form, like he's not part of like a big organization or anything like that, but it's just like in his everyday life. Right. He's told me some crazy stories. I've seen him do some crazy things just out of an act of service. And I think that's just so impactful to me. And I think it's been I'm so grateful to have that in my life, especially growing up and just like being like an adult now, you know, or a young adult. And just being able to look back on those experiences, and just being able to be something, like have that impression in my life, and just being able to strive for that in my own life, I think has been really, really awesome. So
that's so good. I love your dad. That's awesome. Gabe, who for you?
For me, the first person that comes to my mind is my mama, and she what she does is just, she's a giver, and so I've seen her buy socks, like brand new socks, and she just stores them in her car for whenever she sees a person who is living on the street and without a home, and she'll hand out socks while she's driving around. And so she's just a wonderful person, and probably the biggest inspiration in my life. And to see her care for people who are usually called dirty or unworthy, to see her kindness towards those people and to everybody she meets is just really inspiring, and it's just super inspiring. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I hope I can be that kind of mom someday for my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old. Oh, that's so good. As a last closing thought, obviously you have an entire school, your peers, the people who you are with in classes and in your living areas or in the dome as you are commuting back and forth. You have all of them listening to this time. What would you want them to know? As you think about service, what would be like a parting thing that you say, I really want you to know that this is what service is or could mean or could do? What would that be? Gabe, we'll start with you.
I think what you can do as students is just spend time in reading the Bible, as well as listening to other people, and finding those needs that are your roommates, the people closest to you, your friends and family, and to be of the same mind as Christ, and to serve as Christ served with the full authority and power given to Jesus. Jesus still put himself below us and came and served us.
That's good. Thank you. Lolly?
Yeah, I think how we touched on it a little bit earlier is that I think service has this idea of that you're losing something when you're doing service, that you're losing your time, or you could be doing something else. But I think service benefits you in such a way, like spiritually, ethically, morally, and all of those things. And I think service shouldn't be seen as you're losing something, but you're gaining something at the same time.
That's good. That's good. Holly?
Yeah, I would just say, honestly, being available to the Holy Spirit, and that's God's gonna move so much through that of you just being available, whether that interrupts your plans or not. God has impacted my life in so many ways through the unexpected and through interrupting my life and being able to serve, whether through it's in a conversation or an opportunity to go somewhere. And so I would just say, really take the doors that are being opened to you and take those opportunities, and just be available to what God wants to do in you and through you, because it's worth it, because you get to know him more and you get to know his people more, and just to be able to witness that and be a part of that is a blessing. So
that's right. Thank you all so much. All of the things that you have shared have been impactful for me, super profound, and I hope and pray that they're impactful for your community and your colleagues. Students, thank you so much for being with us today. I encourage you and I implore you and I commission you and I bless you to go wherever it is that you are planted, whether that's on this campus or in your local community. Maybe you feel called to serve in a national or international capacity. I bless you and I commission you to go and serve in that way. I pray that you will encounter God more clearly, that you will learn new things about yourself, and that ultimately you can enter into whatever vocation or whatever is next for you as the lived expression of Jesus Christ, as Christ's hands and feet, as the one who brings love and joy and mercy and grace and all of the fruits of the Spirit wherever it is that you go. So we thank you and we bless you today. Bye.